Another one of my friends that we're going to join is Joe Burke. He hails from Wisconsin originally. Now he lives in Jackson Hole, and he was the editor of Tying Flies with Jack Dennis and Friends. But he is a wonderful fly tyer. He's got some special patterns that he's going to share with us.
There's one pattern that I have probably tied more of than any other pattern, and that's a Quigley cripple. As far as what I have tied these to imitate, certainly I think that the primary thing that they imitate are either cripples, stillborn, or emerging mayflies, in everything from big size 10 green drakes or size 10 or 12 brown drakes, things that people fish on, in our country anyways, over on the Henry's Fork, in the month of June. And this, I think, is probably, in my opinion, the best pattern for those particular hatches. But what I fish most for them, and most of the hatches that I do see, are the pale morning duns through a good portion of our summer here. Also the mahogany dun, the Paraleptophlebia, a number of places that's a brownish color, or getting its name mahogany dun. But it works also if you just change the sizes a little bit, change the colors a little bit. They'll work very, very well for blue-winged olives, in the tiny ones, even for the little trichos. Again, I think that you can do so many different things with this pattern, and I'll show you a bunch of them, but it just fishes so well. It even does well to imitate, for me anyways, it has, when there are midge hatches, be it in the Wind Rivers, where you'll get some very large midges on a lot of the lakes, a lot of high-altitude lakes other than the Wind Rivers, probably even in California you'll see this. It has worked well in the wintertime on the Madison River, when it will get warm enough that you get a good midge hatch. Then as the sun starts to go down and the midges start to clump up a little bit. A lot of versatility with this fly. This I'll tie that would be a pale morning dun. Okay, let's just attach the thread, and I'm going to use an 8/0 thread. I usually attach it right about where the thorax is going to be, and then we'll go back just above the barb of the hook, come up to about the mid shank. And for this, I like to use a brown hackle. You don't have to use your very best hackles. Bigger one in the middle will work just fine. And what I'm going to try to get off of this are just to peel back some of the barbels. And if you wonder how many to take, about like so. You can see that's notched out of there, which is probably too many. Peel just a few of them out of there. Don't worry about the length, okay? I think that this is important for the proportion of your fly. I go back up to where about the thorax will be. That way I'll have an even thickness. And when I said don't worry about the length of the barbels, of how far they stick out in the back. Now if you notice, if I really torque down, they're going to flare. For this, I generally don't want it to flare, so I'm not going to put tight wraps to the back. I want it to be more like a tube, and I'll show you what I mean. And then I'm just going to take, it did flare a little tiny bit, but I'm not going to worry about that. Just take your scissors and just clip the end. If you're ever in a stream and you see the little mayflies coming down, you're casting upstream, and they come down in these big pulses, you will see some of the bugs that are emerging. Sometimes you get your waders just covered with these things. And take a look at some of them, and you'll see that they do have this little tube-like shuck or exuvia that they're coming out of. And I think that that's probably what this imitates. And then I'm just going to use this thread to create and try to make some even wraps to create the thorax, or the abdomen, excuse me. And if you notice, most all the little mayflies you see have a very, very slight little, abdomen on them. And then I'm going to maybe go back through there one more time. When you're at home on your own, in your own tying room, your lights are just about exactly right. And that's about all you need to do. And again, I generally put just a single little hitch in on a lot of these steps. It makes the fly a lot more durable. And if you're tying commercially, I think that people are happy to get flies that last more than one fish or one bush behind you. And certainly when I'm fishing myself with my own flies, I like to do that. I'm just going to use a little wax and the thread because this is going to be a dry fly. And I had taken out some dubbing. There's a number of different sources. Umpqua has some very nice, very, very fine dubbing material, and just pull off little tiny bits that maybe is even a little more than I need, or that'll be just about right for size 16. And then the last dub just up to the same direction anyways, instead of twisting 2 directions. And what I do for the ball is I try to just use my fingers like so, and this is the thorax, just to do about like so, okay? That looks about right. If you want a fatter one, you can make a fatter one. If you want one that's that thin, which I prefer that size, then I'll do it. Now you can use natural deer hair. You can use Texas whitetail. If you notice, most pale morning duns that you'll see on the stream do have a very pale morning dun sort of a color to their wings. So I'm going to use a lighter color, and I think this is maybe a Texas whitetail body hair that I'm using for this one. And just knock out a bunch of the little fuzzy stuff and the short stuff. And that's probably going to be more than enough, but after we stack it, a lot of times my dog will start barking when I start doing this, thinking there's somebody at the door. Again, I do have plenty in there. Just put it up to the light. Grab the tips, you can pull the short ones out. If you see Jack do this, he doesn't use a stacker a lot of times, he'll do it with his fingers. I'm not that good. And then again, I think I probably have plenty there. Take a few more out. The more of these you tie, just like any flies, the better you get with it. And just going to put the tips forward. If you put it in a little long, you can pull it back a little bit. That's probably going to be just about right. And you can take your fingers and kind of wiggle it into position there. Make a few wraps in the front of that. And then I'm going to pick these butts up and just clip them like so. And that's going to be the wing case that's breaking on a fly, the mayfly, as it's starting to emerge. Then we'll grab a hackle. In this case, I'm going to look through here and find one that's going to be for about a size 16 what I'm tying. That's about a size 14. I've had some people that have asked when they'll see you tie, they'll say, well, you know, I can sometimes pick out the right one, but then I don't get enough practice that I can go back and get another one. As you go through here, if you're going to be tying half a dozen flies or so, and you want to pick out half a dozen, when you find 1 or 2 rows in your neck, kind of keep your fingers there and go back through and pick the other ones out. It'll save you a whole lot of time, and the consistency of your flies will be about the same. If your fly tying bench looks like that, it looks like mine, stuff all over the place. What I do, rather than peel back the hackles to expose the stem, is I like to cut it, and then I like to take my scissors and just leave some stubs out. That way, when you attach it, it does not pull out as you start with your hackle pliers to hackle your flies. I think it makes a big difference. I'm sure a lot of people have done that. Jimmy Nix is the first I saw do it. And regardless of whether you're working with tiny flies or great big saltwater flies or bass bugs like Jimmy does, it works just fine. I'm going to take and put the shiny side towards the back. Just attach this like so with a couple of turns. Come up to the front. I don't know how well you can see this from there, but I'm going to try to get that little stub bit out of there. Again, take my little hackle pliers here. Attach it. Hold on to it maybe a little bit better. A little fly like this, 2 or 3, sometimes 4 turns in the back, depending on what size you're working with. Some of the saddles that you get now that have these incredibly long, consistent numbers of barbels on the stems, you can tie a lot of flies with exactly the same one. Now, you can use very light colored hackle if you like for this. And rather than cut this, I like to, after you've done it, just to pop it out like that. Take your fingers and preen those little fibers away from the eye. We're going to whip finish it. You can use a lighter colored hackle if you like, and I do oftentimes for the pale morning duns, but other times I like to use, let's do one more just to build up the eye. That 8/0 thread didn't give much of a head to that fly. There we go. We can trim that. Trim a couple out of there, but we had caught them with the thread, so you're going to stay put. Anyways, sometimes I'll use a very light colored hackle, but I also like to use dun hackle, especially the real metallic dyed duns that are available from Spencer and some other places that I've seen. There's not much appeal to them when you look at them in the fly shop, but if you look at them in the natural light, if you put it up to them, there's a real special sheen to them. And I think it does make a difference on these flies, especially on tough fish that have been fished over a whole lot. And then just preen this out a little bit with your fingers. It looks real nice. When you fish it, just take either a very watery sort of a silicone fly dressing, which I prefer on tiny flies, or you can use some of the waxy sorts of things on the larger flies. The little silicone keeps this stuff from matting down quite so much, and they float just fine.